Welcome, everybody, to the Cam Jam Experience. We're about to talk to you a lot about the NBA, a lot about the NFL, whatever else comes to our mind. Woo! This is Cameron Gwynn talking at you. I got my boy James Pacson. What's up, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah, doing Cam.
I'm doing good. I hope you're thinking with your dipstick today, Jimmy, because we're about to have a great show. We got the NBA. This is a surprise to you. And you and I both were sitting there watching yesterday the closing ceremonies of the Joe. It's a sad day, right?
Oh, yeah, it was very sad. It was an interesting ceremony to see everything go down. But it was more of a happy moment. In my opinion, it worked out well.
I think they did a great job with how they set up everything. They had a lot of the Red Wings greats come out. They had a lot of the old training staff. Just a lot of great people came out. I was a little surprised, and I'm glad that he made it, that Stevie Y came out, because I'm sure he's got a lot that he's doing with everybody else that he's working for right now. But he was an iconic Red Wing. It was very nice to see him.
He's arguably the
Best
most valuable Red Wing of all time,
Yeah.
with the exception of Gordie Howe.
Yeah, he's right there.
There was only one guy who I was disappointed who didn't make an appearance in the video, because I don't know if you saw the video, because a couple guys who I was texting some people last night, and they were like, where's this guy, where's this guy? And so there was a video where Babcock, Dadzuk, and Shanahan said something. The only guy I was wondering about was where the hell was Draper?
Yeah,
He didn't make an appearance in the video.
No.
He didn't make an appearance on the stage. And in my opinion, he would have been the one guy who was important with all of those guys who either should have made a video appearance or should have made a on ice appearance.
You know, now that you mention it, yeah, I didn't even realize that he wasn't in the video.
He was not.
Well, yeah, no, that is a really good player that should have been in the video. He was always an impact whenever he got out on the ice.
Did you hear a very interesting tidbit? Sorry to interrupt you real quick. But Brad Galea of Channel 7 reported that a bunch of players and the wife of Bob Probert, Danny,
yeah,
she spread some of his ashes in the penalty box yesterday.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
I thought it was great how every wife that came out to represent their late husband,
Yeah, there was a couple.
they all had urns with the ashes of the player in it.
I think more
that
than
was
a couple
really,
people did that, and I thought that was really cool. There
I
were
thought
sons,
that was really nice.
grandsons, wives. It was a big deal.
And
When you're a Detroit Red Wing, you're more of a family member instead of a hockey player.
Exactly. It's like every Red Wing is a family member. Every time a new Red Wing gets drafted, hey, welcome to the family. That's just how the organization is. I think that's a great way to build an organization, too, because you get the players to feel comfortable there. They like the environment they're in. And that's why they were such a great team for so long, is because they have that. But the thing I want to get into is obviously the Pistons and Red Wings are leaving the Palace and the Joe. They're both shutting down after this season, and they are going to Little Caesars Arena down in Detroit. So that got me thinking, wow, this team in the Pistons and the Red Wings were both really, really good around the beginning of the 2000s. I know it's going to be a while before this happens, but imagine how it's going to be having both those teams good again in Little Caesars Arena. I know it's going to be a while before that happens, but when that does happen, I started thinking about other teams that share arenas with other sports, like the Lakers and the Kings, the Clippers. They all share Staples Center. You got MSG, which is shared between a couple teams. Do you think Little Caesars Arena could possibly become like the Staples Center or MSG?
Are you saying as in more than one team goes to the playoffs in the same stadium, or the atmosphere?
The atmosphere and the successful teams.
I don't think the atmosphere is ever going to be the same as those places. I think it's just a different city. It's a different state. So, but my opinion, I mean, you have a very valid point.
Right.
And I think it's smart to think like that. But personally, when you look at how things work, and this is just based on utter stupidity, but Wings won a championship 97, 98, 02, 08. Pistons won a championship in 04, won championships in 88, 89. They don't ever do amazing in the same year. There could be a chance to go to the playoffs, but
they were good. They were both good contenders around the same time era, though.
I would be willing to bet that they'll never win the championship in the same year.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they'll be a contending team again in both sports.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But I don't think the atmosphere will be the same. I think The only reason I say that is there are. Let's just do a little bit of math. Half of Detroit sports fans are equally Pistons, equally Red Wings, and maybe shade to one area or another. I don't know about you, but I shaded the Wings and the Tigers.
The Wings a little bit.
And, of course, I love the Lions, but the Pistons is definitely my fourth and least favorite Detroit team.
Which sucks because they were my number one for a little bit.
But, anyway, my point is that's about half, but there's a clear difference between Pistons fans and Red Wings fans.
And that brings up another point that I wanted to make. Do you think that the normal Pistons fan is going to change with it being them playing in Detroit now instead of Auburn Hills?
It will be way better. There was no reason they were ever supposed to play that far.
I agree. Because there have been a lot of people talking about the Joe closing, the Palace closing. More people are upset about the Joe closing just because of what the Red Wings did there and what they represented, really. More people are, whatever, the Palace is gone, the Palace is gone. A lot of people wanted the Pistons in Detroit years ago before that even happened, which you just said they should have been.
In the past 12 months, the difference about the Joe is, of course, the Palace has amazing concerts and amazing
the Palace is a
games.
nice place, and they'll still thrive off concerts.
But my point is, in the past 12 months, in the past year, Bon Jovi, Green Day, Drake, and there's another country artist. But
Chance the Rapper will be there soon. They got big names that are
Chance the Rapper's at the Palace, not the Joe.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Palace. Sorry.
No, the Joe has way different types of music that go in there and always do the best they can. And the Joe was just a better place to have things. Not unluckily on tradition that they won more.
Yeah.
But also it was the feel. I didn't like going to the Palace as much just because I don't like going to the Big House. It's not special to be at the event when there's 110,000 people there, in my opinion. Also, there's just too many people. It's not the down home atmosphere I'm used to. When you go to Rupp Arena in Kentucky, you feel like you're one of the only people who get to see an amazing Kentucky basketball game. When you go to those places in the SEC, you get that feel.
Right.
You don't feel that here, and that's kind of what you felt at the Joe. You feel it at Comerica Park. I don't know if you get what I'm saying at all.
There's a certain atmosphere that goes along to certain ballparks.
You don't get it at Ford Field. You don't get it at the Palace.
Exactly. And that's just 100% true. That's what I was going to say. But another thing that I loved about the Joe is there's not really a bad seat.
Anywhere.
You can literally sit in what would be the worst seat, the nosebleed, where you can't see anything. It's still a nice seat. If somebody handed me a ticket and said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to be all the way in the back," that's fine. There's not a bad seat there, which made it a lot better. In the Palace, there are some bad seats where you're like, action's there, but I can't really tell.
This is Jimmy Paxson's "Old Man, Get Off My Lawn, Kid" comment of the week. I have one about every week. Sports teams and stadiums are all about ownership.
Yeah.
Illich did an unbelievable job with Comerica Park. He did an unbelievable job at the Joe. He didn't create the Joe, but he helped make the Joe a better atmosphere. He modified it. He evolved to where it's better to watch the games there than at the Palace.
That's fair.
It's all about ownership when it comes to teams
It really
like that.
is.
God, that sucked. It sucked saying it out of my mouth. When you're a kid, you don't think like that. You think, this team's better because they win more.
The Palace just has
this team's better because they're not part of the Ford family, and you don't have to pay $12 for a beer and a piece of pizza. Where at the Joe, you could go pay for a pop, pay for parking, and have a decent evening for $30.
That's true. You go to Comerica, I'm finding tickets for $3 right now at Comerica. That's a nice day.
Find a $3 ticket at Ford Field or the Palace of Auburn Hills.
Exactly, you won't.
Makes me sick. I feel like I'm
gross.
45 and I hate my job.
It's gross. The thing that also sucks about the Palace, though, is they just had so many dumb gimmicks. That's all that was going on during timeouts or during halftime.
The dancing. Why was the dancing such a big deal?
It was gimmicks. That's all it was. The Joe didn't have the gimmicks. It kept true to what the sports was. That's all we want when we go there. We don't want dumb gimmicks. We don't want money grabs. We want the sport. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. We're going to go to the Pistons. We're going to talk about what they can do in the draft, who they can pick up, and because they're going to go to the new arena, maybe they can turn things around. We'll see. But let's get into that. We got the NBA draft that we're going to look at. We got some great players. This is an unbelievable draft. I am so excited to see where people fall. This draft class is deep. Very, very deep.
How deep?
How deep?
How deep?
about you can get a great player halfway through the second round.
That was arguably very deep.
That's deep. That's so deep.
I was looking for like
That's
a
deep,
different
like
metaphor.
Like Kendrick Lamar's lyrics and half his songs.
That's what I was looking for.
There you
More
go.
of a
Better?
writers or a movie or
Kendrick Lamar.
a photography deep instead of a basketball take. But I'll take that deepness.
That's about as deep as the Pacific Ocean.
Pacific's pretty deep.
That's pretty deep. It's about 11,000 feet deep.
I don't think that's right at all.
That is right.
Actually, we're gonna have to argue this real quick.
That is right.
Not get off
Go
sports.
look it up. Go look
Pacific,
it up. No, I'm dead serious.
Ocean.
I saw. I
now
see.
is that deepness?
Depth.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, no, this is the guy who was the sports editor.
12,100 feet. It is not 11,000
Oh, no.
1.7 miles down.
It just grew an extra couple hundred feet deeper within the past couple minutes, you know?
Okay, it's
like,
over
it's
a
like
grand.
the Great Canyon, you know? The Great Canyon kind of just slowly erodes away.
Grand.
I'm just kidding.
Grand. The hell's the Great Canyon? We're going to get back to sports because we have no
Did I
idea
say
what
great?
the hell. You said great.
Oh, really?
You said the
Because in
Great
my head, I
Canyon.
said grand.
I'm letting you know right now you said great twice.
Okay. Well,
we're going to go to sports right now.
I'm not a geography person. That's why I talk about
stop.
sports.
We're both stopping. The NBA draft this year is, of course, an amazing draft class. A bunch of great players. One quick question before we get into it. We'll have a little argument here. Are freshmen kind of ruining the instinct of the National Basketball Association? What I mean by that is most of the draft is flooded with these one-and-dones and freshmen, and where they're playing in the NBA at 19 or 20 years old. I don't like that as much because I don't think they're as experienced basketball-wise and as age-wise to compete as before. Because when you look at it, these young guys aren't really excelling playoff-wise.
No.
They're just excelling, statistics-wise. Like, none of these guys are really amazing when it comes to being in the playoffs. And one guy I want to argue about that is a guy who it took a little longer to him to develop into an amazing player, but he's always been a pretty decent player, is Gordon Hayward. Mm-hmm. He now plays for the Utah Jazz.
Yep.
He's 27 years old.
Yeah.
And he's done an unbelievable job for Utah.
He really has. He's grown into that player.
My point is, do you think these freshmen are ruining the NBA? Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think it's going to work out? What's your take on it?
I think players should have to go to college for at least 2 years, like they do for football. I think that would help them because, like you said, they're 19 and 20. You're sending kids to go play. You give them that extra year and a half, they start becoming a man. They start getting a better body type for the NBA. They start getting stronger. They get a little faster. Gives them more time to develop their craft and find their special niche. So, yeah, no, I totally agree with that. The freshmen are kind of watering down the NBA, and it's taking it longer for them to adapt to it. I think with that extra year in college, getting a feel for it gives you more experience, obviously, but also helps you in the long run. That's why I'm thinking this is somebody that proved himself throughout the tournament this year in Joel Berry from North Carolina. I think he's going to be a great player in the NBA. I think he spent enough time because he was a junior. He spent enough time in college to get that experience of what it's like playing in playoff-type atmosphere as in the tournament. So I think he will be an impact player. Give him maybe 2-3 years, but it won't be like 5-6 compared to most players.
I think when you do the one-and-dones, it's something that you don't see. And you know what? There's two old man get off my lawn comments from Jimmy this week.
There's going to be at least 4.
Well, I don't know what the over-under is. But the fact is he's experienced failure. He's experienced not being amazing and having to come back and to become a good player. Lonzo Ball hasn't experienced that. Malik Monk hasn't experienced that. De'Aaron Fox hasn't experienced that. Yes, they've experienced bad games.
Yeah.
But my point is utter failure.
Yeah.
Coming back with the same people or the same coach.
North Carolina.
You
read your mind.
Completely read my mind.
Exactly.
But we're getting into it, even though I don't like the freshmen. Give me some of the top players this year who could do an unbelievable job at the NBA level and who you think is going to do great at teams. And the reason we're doing it this way is because it's a lottery pick. I don't like the hypotheticals. Cameron, you may like to do the hypotheticals of, LA's going to draft this. You don't know.
No, you don't know.
It's stupid.
No, I totally agree
hate
with that.
these NBA analysts who go, this is who LA's going to pick. They could pick first or they could pick 10th.
Yeah, no, we can give you who we think are going to be the great players, but until the lottery comes, we don't know where they're going to go.
Right.
For some of these players, it's not really as big of a deal as to where they go. It's just they're going to play how they're going to play because they love the game. That's what you notice with a lot of these players is they also love the game, and when you love the game, it doesn't matter where you play.
We're giving you the best all-around players.
Yes.
And Cameron's going to go first with one of his. These are not in any order to my knowledge.
No.
No, perfect.
For me, they're not.
For me, neither.
Somebody that I think, even though he's a freshman, I think he'll do good in the NBA is Malik Monk. I think he kind of figured out his play style, and I think it works for the NBA. He kind of plays like a Russell Westbrook, but also lays off and plays kind of like a I don't want to say Kevin Durant because he's not really big and lengthy like him, but he kind of like sits around the 3-point line and drives in every once in a while and kicks it out, kind of like he does, you know?
I was going to compare him to something else.
Yeah.
And you may disagree on this. He's a Chris Paul player with the shooting ability of Kevin Durant.
I don't think he's quite on the caliber with handles as Chris Paul. I see where you're going with that, but
he can dribble around very often. He can lead an offense.
He can.
Why
I don't think he's as tricky as Chris Paul is. I think he's kind of right to the point where he's got a really good cut. He goes 0 to 100 when he goes to cut left. It's right back down to 0, and then the defender's gone the other way.
Which develops over experience. You got to remember, this guy's 19.
And he's already got that. So, yeah, that will help him a lot. I think if he gets his handles up, he will be Chris Paul status.
He averaged 19.8, so 20 points per game this year. And he had 2 rebounds and 2 assists per game when he played for Kentucky. One thing I want to bring to your attention is his 3-point percentage was .397, so about at a 4. And that's something that NBA really wants.
Right.
And I like that. He had a 45% at the field goal unit, so good for Malik Monk. And we're going to stay with the big blue boys and go to De'Aaron Fox because Kentucky always has some unbelievable freshmen.
Oh, I wonder why.
And it's amazing how Fox and Monk are somewhat interchangeable, but there's one slight difference between them, is De'Aaron Fox plays an unbelievable defensive presence, and he's a sneaky defender. You wouldn't be able to think that De'Aaron Fox would do what he can do on defense. I think both players will be amazing, but if you had to pick between Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox, who would you pick?
I think I would probably pick Malik Monk just because of how the NBA is. The NBA is more of an offensive-driven game, even though I do think that De'Aaron Fox would be an awesome presence for a team on defense. I think every team should have at least one player where they're defensively so strong that it helps the defense as a whole, kind of like how the Warriors have Draymond Green. He's that defensive presence. Sure, he'll probably score you about 6 points a game, but he'll also make up for it on defense by not allowing like 10, 12 points because he's there. So there's, like we said, it's deep. So there are a lot of other players that we can look at. There's one player that I do want to look at you love him. I love him. But I don't think he gets enough attention nationwide in Jason Tatum from Duke. For some reason, I don't think he gets enough attention.
Because he was overshadowed this year
with Grayson Allen crap. Let's just say the little Brett overshadowed a great player.
Well, it's not only that, he was a quiet player.
He kind of was,
compared to Grayson Allen. And also, the reason nobody talks about him, surprise, surprise, is because he didn't outstand in the media aspect of it.
Right.
And that's why it's arguable. We made a comment on a podcast 2 weeks ago when we were talking about Lonzo and LeVar Ball that you have to do that. It shows charisma, and it shows respect to do what Jason Tatum has done.
It's kind of like Kawhi Leonard.
Correct. He's
goes out
exactly
and
like
does
Kawhi
his job.
Leonard.
Goes out, does his job, doesn't care how much attention he gets.
It was an amazing it was unbelievable to watch him play in that ACC tournament, though.
It really was.
He could do no wrong when it came to chances. He would put up shots that you have no idea were going to go in, but did. Yeah. He averaged 16.8 points this year, and he had 7 rebounds a game. He was an unbelievable player. What team are you expecting him to go to that would draft him, where he would fit in very well? Because I don't think he'd be a guy who would fit in with the Pistons.
No, I don't think he would either.
No. Same with the Celtics and New York Knicks. In my opinion, you got to send him to the West Coast. Yeah. He'd be a great guy when it came
if he goes to the
Clippers.
Spurs, I think that would be the best place for him.
I was going to say Clippers or Portland.
Clippers would be a good spot, too.
But San Antonio would work, too. So Let's hope he gets in there.
If you send him to either of those two places, though, he's going to be somebody that's coming off the bench. He's not going to get that many minutes the first couple of years.
Which is fine.
Right. Which is good because he's going to gain that experience, learn and grow from the great players he's surrounded.
Next guy I want to talk about is a guy that's my favorite guy to look at in this draft, and who, my opinion, would be your Detroit Pistons favorites, as we are mostly a Detroit sports podcast here. Would be T.J. Leaf, who's a power forward from UCLA.
Yes, sir.
He's another one of these freshmen, but he had unbelievable numbers this year.
Yes, sir.
While you were hearing about Lonzo Ball, you didn't really get to hear about T.J. Leaf, but the guy shot 63% from the field and 46% from three.
Those are NBA numbers.
That's amazing. He's 6'10". He's a very versatile player. He can do many things. If you could relate T.J. Leaf to a player from the past, how would you relate him? Who's like
from the Pistons?
No, just in general.
Just in general?
Because there's a guy I think of a lot when I look at T.J. Leaf, and that would be Tim Duncan. Yeah, it's a little faded, but he's a fundamentally shoot from the outside, get the rebounds, work on defense. He's a great player. So I would compare him to Tim Duncan. Is there another guy you would have in mind when you're talking about T.J. Leaf?
In certain moments, I mentioned it earlier, he's got a great passing ability when he gets the ball down low in the post. He's really, really good at finding players that are out wide who can shoot. At moments, it's almost like, and this is only the one aspect of the game, but like LeBron James, when he's in that post looking for a player on the outside to kick it out to, that's kind of what it reminds me of, because it's a quick decision. He knows exactly where he's going to go before the ball gets to him. He has great court vision, and I think that's going to help him a lot in the NBA.
He averaged 16.3 points this season. He had 8.2 rebounds. And one thing I like out of players, Cameron, is consistency.
Yeah.
All right. Here were his last 5 games. 14 points, 15 points, 23 points, 11 points, 17 points. Most of those were between 10 and 17 with the exception of the 23. I like that consistency where you're going to get the same thing out of the guy every single time.
Exactly. Like if you would have said like 5 points at one point, that's stretching it. But the fact that he can go from like 10, he averages around, you said 16 he averages?
Yes.
In those last 5 games, he averaged about 15 with the exceptional 23 points. That's nice. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be a good presence down low to kick the ball out. He's going to be a good player that you're going to go through to figure out a good play. He might be that setup pass, you know?
Agreed 100%. Now what I want us to do for our last 2 players before we move on to a different segment is talk about a Michigan or Michigan State guy, a little hometown boy, who you expect to be great but may not do amazing. I will go first because you're more the U of M Go Blue guy. I'm going to go with Miles Bridges. He's definitely the best player from Michigan State. He is, of course, another freshman, and he didn't do that great when it came to Michigan State play to a lot of people. But the fact is he was overshadowed by the rest of his team. The whole team of Michigan State didn't play that great, in my opinion. So what's really going to help him out in the later sense is being with amazing players and being able to do what he wants to do and showing his game rather than being on a team with a lot of nobodies. For example, I do think he needs to go somewhere, hit the bench for a little bit.
Yeah.
A great place for Miles Bridges, who I think is lacking this, who's lacking a nice guard, who averages 17 points per game, 8 rebounds, and he gets a lot of blocks on the defensive end. A great all-around defensive player who can come off from the bench. Send him down to Atlanta. They're lacking this, in my opinion. They could do something where they put this guy as a 6 or 7, and he just keeps pounding and pounding and pounding because he didn't get tired much if you watch Miles Bridges play.
No.
So my number 1 for him would be Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta would draft him.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think he's going to get drafted in the top 10, which is why I say a team like Atlanta. Atlanta is a playoff team, and it would be easier to say he's not going to get drafted in the top 10. So Miles Bridges from Michigan State, he could be a great NBA player in this loaded draft class.
Quite honestly, it sucks a little bit because I don't think U of M has a better player than what Miles Bridges can be in the NBA.
No.
But I think he would make a good fit for a different team. Atlanta is a good team where he can grow and learn how to play stronger and better. But I think if he goes to the Raptors, I know that sounds a little weird, but I think him being behind Lowry will help him develop his dribbling ability, and I think he would be a good defensive presence for that team. I think that would be a team that he can help out coming off the bench.
With a loaded draft class, I think we picked some important guys who could do well in the NBA. But more importantly, do you think this draft is going to be known as the draft with amazing NBA All-Stars or guys who just weren't good enough? Because I think it's going to be number 2. I don't think all these guys are going to be All-Stars.
I don't think all the guys are going to be All-Stars, no. But I do think this is going to be like the draft that had Wade, Paul, and all those players. That was the 05 draft, right? 05 or 06?
I think you're a little off there.
Am I a little off there?
I'm looking it up right now. I'm pretty sure
no,
no.
Dwayne
Wade's been in the league longer than that.
02 draft.
You're guessing. I think we need to have a conversation about research.
It's early 2000s.
Give me a last final guess because it's just hilarious to me.
2002.
2002 is your last guess.
Last guess.
And who would you say the 2 players were in that draft? Because I don't even think they were in the same draft.
D. Wade?
Yes.
Chris Paul? They weren't in the same draft?
No.
They weren't? Oh, that was terrible.
He was drafted in 2003.
Yeah.
Which was Dwayne Wade, so you didn't guess any of those years.
Carmelo.
Okay, stop guessing player. You're guessing.
That was really bad. Why did I think they were in the same draft?
Chris Paul was drafted in 2005.
2005?
They were not in the same draft. No. Are you serious or are you trying to play a joke? Because none of those players were ever in the same draft. You didn't get a year right.
Wow. That was a little serious for a second.
Okay, let me go to Carmelo Anthony.
But now that I'm terrible, I know Carmelo and D. Wade had to have been in the same one.
Oh, you know that one.
I know that one.
This is unbelievable how we put so much research into the show. And no,
I wasn't ready for that question.
It was 04.
I wasn't ready for that question, to be honest with you. That's what threw me off. Is I don't go far into like past drafts. I look at what we have in the NBA now.
Okay, hold on. He was 2003.
Okay.
Which is the same as D Wade. So congrats. But Chris Paul was in 2006.
Okay.
So none of these.
So the 03 draft is what I'm looking for. That's the one I want. Last final answer. That was really bad, and I do apologize to everybody that listened to that pure idiocy right there. Hey, can we actually... I want to tell a story about something that was worse than that just now. The time where I couldn't remember where the Greek freak was from. You weren't there for that. I couldn't remember where the Greek freak was from for some reason. It totally slipped my mind for about 2 minutes, and I was just like...
Shut up!
Athens, right?
Shut up.
Athens, right?
Stop it. Shut up. Let's go to Kickin It With Cam.
See, this is a sport I excel at because you don't have to use your hands much. So, the Western Conference in the MLS is sort of like the Western Conference in the NBA. It's loaded with great teams. Right now, for the Western Conference, you got Portland in first. Not really a big surprise because they're a good team. They are consistent as can be. FC Dallas, another team that's also really consistent. And Houston, they're in the top 3. We go over to the Eastern Conference. Columbus is in first place, which is a team that's also consistent but hasn't really been as great as they usually are. Orlando, one of the expansion teams from a couple years ago, is doing good. They're in second place. And Atlanta, a brand new expansion team, is in third place. They're looking like a great team. They got some really, really good players on that team that are just pushing them to excel in the MLS. So if we go over to Team USA, bright spot, Christian Pulisic. I know I talk about this guy a lot, but, I mean, you're 18 years old and you're playing for the national team, and you're getting talks about being that you have the potential to be a global superstar, and you're from the U.S., please be that, because we need somebody like that that's going to bring the young kids to loving soccer, and it's going to just make the U.S. a better soccer country. We need players like you, Christian Pulisic. Thank you so much for what you are doing for Team USA. You're doing a great job in Dortmund. Keep it up, please. So, can I take a...
I do want to make it clear
19.
that he's a guy, and I don't think you should sound so in love with him with a very serious girlfriend.
Are you looking at a future? You think that I want to take this guy on dates and stuff like that? No, I
think you're already married to him, by the way. You just talked about him.
Because he's going to be the future of what the U.S. is, and the U.S. hasn't had a great player like that to catapult the experience of the U.S. national team to be a good presence in the World Cup and just international play in general. And when you have somebody like that, it helps the U.S. be a better country. I'm from the U.S. I love the sport of soccer. I want to see the U.S. succeed and possibly win a freaking World Cup or
Talk about his body more instead of his personality.
What do you mean his body? I'm not talking about his body. He looks just like you or me. He's just the same.
Oh, you
same
like
as
him
us.
because he's an everyday person.
You know what? He's a great player. How do you say his last name? You remember his last name?
No idea. No idea.
Let me talk about that.
I'll
let you talk. I'll let you. Pulisic.
Oh, that's his first. I said his first name. My bad.
What's his first name?
No idea. I gave a guess.
Christian.
Christian
Pulisic.
All those soccer players who don't play real sports always come together.
Christian Pulisic.
Sure.
I mean, hey, I'd say he's a better athlete than some football players, but, that's okay. So let's take a pit stop, and I know he's a better athlete than anybody you're about to talk about. Let's talk about NASCAR.
Perfect. On this week's Pacson Pit Stop, yesterday they were in Texas Motor Speedway with a 501 miles and 334 laps. It was a nice race. Your boy, Jimmy Johnson, won in the 48 Chevrolet. He won his first race of the year. He finally got his head out of his behind and started racing like a real winner. Kyle Larson got in second, who's a Chevy driver. Joey Logano got in third, who was a Ford driver. Kevin Harvick got in fourth, another Ford. And Junior got in fifth. And Johnson walked away with 49 points yesterday. He definitely helped his standings mark. Standings right now, Kyle Larson still at the top of the list, which is a very big surprise. Chase Elliott in second, Martin Truex Jr. in third, Keselowski, your other boy, in fourth, and Joey Logano in fifth. Jimmy Johnson, he moved from 18th to 11th this week, so he did very well. Next week, it's a big race in NASCAR. You got any idea where they're racing?
Am I supposed to? I mean, this is your thing. I'm just supposed to know about
soccer.
Guess.
Take a guess.
They're like real athletes, not people driving cars.
All right, they're in Bristol, Tennessee, at Bristol Motor Speedway. It's a half-a-mile oval track. They'll be coming at you at Fox next Sunday on April 23rd, 2 p.m. Defending champion Carl Edwards.
The only one I really want to know about is the one where they don't only turn left.
That's Watkins Glen.
Yeah, that's the only one that I want to see, in my opinion, because that takes skill to be able to also hit the right. It's a little harder to do.
So we're going to go into a little bit of NFL to close the show out today. And I got an interesting segment for Cam, which he'll agree with most of, but we'll argue a little bit. And that is the importance of drafting a quarterback when you already have a very amazing quarterback. For example, a big guy I want to talk about right now, and I'm going to do a little family thing here. My Uncle Neil in Pittsburgh, huge
Neil.
Steelers fan. And he was telling me that he doesn't think Big Ben can last a little bit longer, and I kind of agree. So
I totally agree.
You look at teams like New England with Tom Brady.
Yep.
Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
New Orleans with Drew Brees.
Yep.
They're amazing quarterbacks. I'm
Who do
not
they
going to
have
argue
behind
that. Who do they got behind him? So the reason I look at that is you can always talk about Deshaun Watson and Mitch Trubisky to draft this year, but let's talk about guys who you can draft as a second or third round guy who can be second stringers behind these amazing guys. And that's what I want to talk about because, Cam, how important is it to have a guy to follow up after these guys retire?
I mean, it's really, really important. And like you said, Big Ben going away, Pittsburgh has nobody behind Big Ben. New England kind of might have something with Garoppolo, but quite honestly, it's just the coaching staff that's going to tailor to your quarterback. And when you do that, you're going to be successful. So anyone that goes to New England should be successful, assuming the coaching staff stays on the same path that they have been. But yeah, no, having a great quarterback when you have an older quarterback like a Breeze, Brady, Big Ben, they're not going to stay young forever. So get that young guy in there under the big talent. Like I think Dak Prescott having the ability to get coached by Tony Romo a little bit this past season helped him.
It probably helped him a lot.
I feel like that having that experience being pushed onto you, like, hey, this is what you're going to expect. This is what you need to do. Get the ball out in this time. Find this receiver. Keep your head on a swivel. Like all that stuff that's coming from an actual, I wouldn't say Tony Romo is extremely elite, but he was a good quarterback. Having something come from a good quarterback like that is just going to help you in the future.
Correct. And a couple guys I want to point out to you that could really make a difference, and some names I want you to remember, is Davis Webb. He's a California quarterback. He comes from the University of California. He's projected to go in the late second, early third round. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. He's a senior. He's got a heck of an arm.
What was his completion percentage?
Completion percentage for Davis Webb, it's not unbelievable, but again, it could be worked on.
Right.
These are guys that I'm talking about right now.
Developing players.
Developing. You got exactly what I was looking for. These
Yep.
guys aren't going to be starting quarterbacks right away. He had 4,295
That's nothing
yards,
to sneeze about.
37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. His completion percentage was 61%.
That's not terrible.
Which is an improvement because in 2005 his completion percentage was 53%.
2015.
2015, excuse me.
We're good. We're making mistakes. It's okay.
2015 it was 53, 2016 it was 61. So there's a lot of improvement. I think Davis Webb could be a nice second round, third round quarterback that one of these big teams who don't need a quarterback right now could get. Another guy I want to add on to there is Nathan Peterman from Pittsburgh. He's projected to go in the third round.
That's not a bad pick. I've seen him play.
Yes.
He's a good player.
Yes.
He looks like he's got his head on the right path to working hard. If he made a mistake, he was right there with the coach trying to figure out what he did wrong and how he can make it better. That's a good pick right there.
You are exactly right. He was a senior. He did a lot with offensive strategy, as you were talking about. Couldn't find the words there.
I think they let him call most of the plays too.
One thing I want to look at with him is in 306 attempts this year, he threw 7 interceptions.
That's good.
It's really good. Pittsburgh didn't have a great team this year,
right?
But he threw 27 touchdowns and he threw 2,855 yards, completion percentage of 60 completions.
Yeah.
He played all 4 years, started 2 out of 4 years for the Pittsburgh Panthers. He did a good job, real good job, and I think that's another guy where they're like, we can develop him.
And this is one thing that I wish was easier to find is how many of those completions were how many of those incompletions were drops on the wide receiver's part. Because there are a lot of moments. Pitt didn't really have many good wide receivers. So I think that could have impacted his completion percentage because when they played against, it's escaping me who they played against, but there were a lot of drops where it was right in the numbers. The ball was pretty much put there right in your hands, and you just kind of let go of it. So that's something that, to his benefit, he's throwing good. He has a good arm. He's very accurate. The only thing that might be a stretch is throwing those big bombs, like those 20
That's his weakness. He does have a weakness when it comes to distance.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, he's going to be a good quarterback. If he develops that, I think that'll be the difference between him having a good career and a great career.
All right. This last guy I'm going to talk about right now, involving quarterbacks that these big teams should look at, is from Texas Tech. He's an early second rounder. Okay, this guy's unbelievable, Cameron. He's a junior. Patrick Mahomes the second. He's 6'2", 230 pounds. He threw for 5,052 yards, 41 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. In his career at Texas Tech, which he's a junior, so he's only played for 3 years, he threw 93 touchdowns, 11,252 yards. This guy is an unbelievable passer.
Did he start all 3 years?
He did. He started all 3 years. And a couple of his big games I want to point out to you is against Louisiana Tech in this past 2016 year.
Yeah.
He had 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. And against Kansas, he had 4 touchdowns, 277 yards.
Wow.
And against Kansas State, 504 yards. Are you ready for the 2 kickers? Against Oklahoma, 734 passing yards.
What?
And 5
against
touchdowns.
Oklahoma?
Against Oklahoma. They lost that game, 66-59. Texas Tech isn't necessarily caring about defense.
No.
And against Baylor in the last game of the year, 586 yards. He threw a pass for 81 yards. 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He had a QB rating of 215. Patrick Mahomes II from Texas Tech will be an amazing quarterback in the NFL, but he's not exactly a guy who I think needs to be starting very soon. So that's why I think he needs to go to one of these big teams. My opinion, get him down to Narlands so Sean Payton can train him.
That's the perfect place for him to go.
Drew Brees has 2-3 years tops.
He plays just like Drew Brees. That's the perfect place for him to go.
He's not a runner. He's 230 pounds.
He's not going to – yeah, I know. He's not going to make it hard on the coaching staff if they draft him. I think that's a great draft for New Orleans.
So we'll continue NFL draft real quick. Go quickly to Cam right now. Talk about your Lions. Who they need, who you want them to get, who you love, who you got to have in this year's NFL draft.
I mean, what you want, I got it. Lions talk. They're doing pretty good this offseason. I'm liking the pickups we're getting. There's just a couple spots that I think we need a little work on is the secondary on the defense. I think if we can get a strong safety or cornerback who can read plays very well and is athletic, speedy, and can get to where the ball is going to go and get to the person who has the ball to stop it early, so then there's not big passing plays against them. But that's a position that I would love to fill.
And I agree with you, but I'm still going to stick with the guy I talked about a couple weeks ago as the guy who we need to draft. And I know it's crazy, another Lions offensive pick who may not do well. Get Alvin Kamara from Tennessee. That guy's an amazing running back. I talked to you about him, how he could be a great speed back.
Yep.
He could be a great running back. With developments from an offensive coach, I think he could do amazing. I want to go with Kamara, but I agree with the defense.
Is Kamara someone we can get in the second round, though? Possibly.
Potentially, he could drop, and I would have no problem with that. I mean, we have a late pick.
Right, we kind of do, yeah.
And we could get him in the second round. I agree with you there, but I do think we need to worry about running back, offensive line, and defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of linebacker talk, but I like our linebackers.
I think our linebacker core it's good. It's not great. It's good. They have room to develop still. They have areas where they lack a little bit, and sometimes it seems like the big linebackers who do the most work get tired on plays, so it would be nice to have another good linebacker in there, but that's not really a point where we need to make an instant change right away.
I think we draft one.
Like in the secondary, I think you need to make a change soon. You need to add another good athletic presence in the backfield.
Correct. But while we're talking about these linebackers, I like to hear Whitehead.
Mm-hmm.
I like Josh Bynes.
I like it.
I like Antoine Williams. I like Thurston Armbister. These are guys who we've seen play linebacker either in the preseason or the regular season, and I think they're going to do very well.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that defensive back with Cameron. My opinion, we go for Alvin Kamara if he's there.
Yeah.
If he drops to the second, that's totally fine. I just think we need a better running back.
I would agree with that
because we're not going to get one in free agency.
I think
we're not going to spend the money for it.
I think that's a spot that you worry for your second pick, though. I think for your first pick, you got to go with a safety because there are a lot of really good players that you can get in the safety or cornerback position. The defensive side of the ball this year is awesome for this draft class.
Yes, it's a more defensive guy. And in a show we did 2 weeks ago where we talked about all of the NFL draft, most of the guys were defensive people.
There were only 2 quarterbacks in the first round.
Yes,
that's correct. There were only 3 running backs in the first round. And
that's correct.
If I'm remembering correctly, only 4 receivers?
3 or 4. Depending on who you pick, but 3 or 4. And
this is another draft. We're getting spoiled this year.
Oh, very spoiled.
And I have
one more very important question. Do the Lions draft Jabril Peppers?
I knew I should have said it earlier. I was literally thinking right when you said go talk about the Lions. When I stopped talking, I was like, he's about to ask me about Jabril. I should probably just say, don't ask me about Jabril. It's the same answer that you got last week about Jabril. You're going to ask me every time before the draft comes, aren't you?
All right, 3 straight weeks he said no about Jabril Peppers. I have
Jabril.
two more shows before I can ask you. Join us next week. We get into some playoffs involving the NHL and the NBA, and Jimmy can start talking about one of his favorite things. He'll do a little bit of a wrap-up instead of NASCAR about the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby is in 3 weeks.
Did you just talk in third person?
Yes.
Is that what okay. I was making sure I heard you correctly because that was a little weird.
Join us next week as I start my Derby talk. We talk about the playoffs. We get into a little bit more of the NFL draft. After the NFL draft stops in a couple weeks, we get into the NBA draft. Join Cam, Jam, Cameron Gwynn, James Pacson as we talk your sports involving Detroit and all around the country.
Jabril.